Hello, everybody. I am delighted and honored to be on this call today with Charan Surdhar, who is she's an epigeneticist. I knew I was going to stumble over that one. If you're not familiar with epigenetics yet, you're about to become familiar with what this is. It's a science that's been around for many, many years now, and is starting to kind of hit the headlines in the holistic space, let's say it that way. And it's becoming something that we all need to understand and tap into and really understand the power that we have to control the expression of our genes. So this is going to be very different to our normal podcast interviews, in that we're going to go way deeper than just the nutrition side of things and being active and all these kind of biohacks and all these kind of wonderful things and important things. We're going to go into genes. And I'm not really the authority in this space, which is why I brought on my new friend, Charan Surdhar. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce her and say thank you for joining me today, Charan.
Thanks so much, Neil. It's such a pleasure to be here and meet your audience, and I'm happy to help in any way.
Thank you. Yeah. So we had a phone call a couple of weeks ago. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and we could have spoken for quite some time on this subject because it really is cutting edge. It's state-of-the-art stuff. I believe it's been around since 2005. Has the science of epigenetics been around since 2005? Is that right?
I'd say it's been around more than that, because I think Bruce Lipton, I read his book in 2005 or 2006. So
yeah.
So it was way before that. But it was just not well known. That's all.
Just not well known. This is quite incredible. And Charan has some incredible case studies that we're going to be talking about in a second. So Charan, what got you into this? What's your background?
So I was a geneticist. I did human genetics, my master's in human genetics, and I was working in the laboratory with DNA for 13 years. So literally handled DNA, worked with it. And my job was really to go in and look at the DNA. And, I think everyone is probably familiar, but DNA is made up of letters, like an alphabet. And it reads out certain proteins. So basically the body knows what proteins to make as a result of which way those sentences on the DNA are laid out. And so, people were coming into the hospital with blood disorders, and the consultants would ask me to look at their DNA to then identify what those sentences were in their DNA that were resulting in the particular condition. So that's what I did for 13 years. But while I was doing that, there was a quest in me to find out that there was something else. So it just kept pushing me, it was like, I just knew there was something else. And I think we had this conversation, the last time we spoke, is that my son had eczema at the age of 3 months. And that's something that, you resonate with. And that was what pushed me to keep finding something, because I knew that the steroids weren't working, none of that was working. Something was there that I just knew that I had to find. And I know now that it was him that was a gift to me to actually get me to where I am today. So that's how I am doing what I do now, because after I left the laboratory, I knew that I had to help people in a way that was congruent with epigenetics, rather than sort of being a victim to our genes, which is, you have something in your family that's being passed on. It could be, cancer, it could be eczema, it could be, anything, immune disorders or anything. And people they were made to believe, or still are, that if you have that, then you're gonna end up with it. There's no way out of it. Like, you're doomed to that. But epigenetics is really about talking about, epi means above the genes, so the control is above the genes. And then the next question, if you don't mind me going on, because once I get started, I can't stop, is epi means that above the genes. So what is above the genes? It's our emotions, it's our beliefs, those things that we have inherited from our ancestors. So many studies also show this, that things that have come from say somebody has ancestors that were in the Holocaust, or there was somebody who's their ancestors were going through famine or drought. Studies have shown that those things impact our genetics, and it's that energy that gets passed on down to us that then influences us, plus the beliefs that we create as children. So, somebody's parent might say to someone, "You're really stupid." That may not be implying that it's the event, that whatever they did was stupid, but not them themselves, but they took it on as being that. And so then their whole lives, they just can't figure out why they can't get over something, or why they've got self-esteem issues, or, it's stuff like that. So all these things influence the DNA. And that's answering your question. That's how I got to do what I'm doing.
Wow, it's incredible, isn't it? So what they found is this a fair kind of summary. Epigenetics is about the fact that you just said epi means above. So ultimately it's the environment in our body that determines whether or not a gene is expressed or not. Is that fair? Is that, it's kind of dumbed down a little bit maybe, but is that a good kind of summary?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think with the work you do too, with nutrition and all of that, that also plays a big, that's also the epi, that's part of it. So why your clients get such good results is because you've got, you're taking care of that. So that's the whole thing altogether.
Yeah. Love it. So what could we say affects the environment? What could we say, the big spectrum of what affects the environment, which determines whether or not a gene for a certain illness or disease or vitality is turned on or not?
That's a really good question. I believe it's our perception.
Oh, now we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if we have those beliefs, say for instance, they've done twin studies, right, where they look at twins that have gone through, they're in their later years, and one would be completely healthy and the other one's really ill, and they're identical twins. I'm just giving examples. The perception that those individuals had in their life, they inherited the same stuff, the genetic material, but the beliefs along the way influenced how they showed up. So it's our perception that I think is the answer to that.
Interesting. So it's our perception of our environment, perception of our world, and I guess the additional environmental factors are what we consume, how much we move, managing emotions and toxins. Because that all affects the environment, doesn't it? Which also affects the DNA.
Yeah, it all does. Obviously, the toxins and all of that does. And I have to take care of that myself. Like we all do. But we know of not studies, but we know. I don't know if have you heard of Ram Dass?
That sounds familiar, but please remind me.
Well, he's written some books. I forget what they're called now, but he lives in Maui in Hawaii, and when he was in his younger years, he used to take LSD, and he went to India to get enlightenment or whatever he wanted to do, and he went to this guru, and he said he was sitting there, and he'd taken with him a whole packet of LSD because he wanted while he was there on the trip. So he said that the guru just knew that he had this, and he said to him, "Can you give me all of it?" And he was like, "Well, he was kind of reluctant," and then he gave it to him, and the guy just popped it all, like he literally took it all, and that could have killed anyone. And but instead, nothing happened. Nothing happened to him. And so, this is where, when I say about perception, and our beliefs that influence our reality, whether we have these toxins in our environment, if we can clean up the inside and become, the universal I, the force that runs the universe, if we can be that focus of just being that is going to power our DNA. And it's going to come through us and express our biology through that. Whereas at the moment, we have to take care of that because we're not at that place, because we're in that place where, we know that certain things will impact us or, whatever. And rightly so, but the point I'm trying to make here is that when we see these kind of individuals doing this, we know that there is that capability within us. And how do we get to that? Well, this is my passion. It's like basically to merge science with ancient wisdom and spirituality, because that's that's where everything just clicks with the DNA. That's where we become the powerful beings, the miracle body that we are.
Love that. The miracle body. So let's, I feel like I want to share with the audience one of your most recent case studies, and then we can do your even more incredible case studies, and then we can talk more about how this works. Can you tell them about the arthritis one that I saw? I think you wrote it yesterday.
I worked with a client that had, this was just, just the other day. So any feedback or anything that she has, I don't know about, but during the session, she's had arthritis for years, and she was, having difficulty getting up and down in her chair. And 30 minutes we did the session, and she was able to get up and down without any pain. And I'm sure you get this too, when you're with your clients, it's like when they get that sudden sort of like, did that just happen? Kind of. And then they just laugh because they're like, well, I really don't know what else to do. But what I want people to know from that is that it's not me that did anything. It's when people come to me, it's the frequency of the work of what I just said. The universal I. When we hold that space for our clients, that's what it unfolds. It's only natural, and what we can say is a miracle, but it's natural. It's like a cut would heal. Right? It healed.
Yeah, something that Greg Braden said is, I know you're a fan of his as well as Bruce Lipton. Obviously, you wrote The Biology of Belief. But Greg Braden said, something is a miracle until we understand how it works, and then it just becomes a technology. So when we understand about the power of infinite intelligence and tapping into source energy, whatever you want to call it, infinite intelligence, source energy, God, it's the idea that when we become a vessel for this force to come through us, these miracles can happen. But to people who do it all the time, it's just a technology.
Yeah,
it's a miracle if you're following the mainstream stuff and learning about drugs and we now know that there's a reason, there's a history behind the training behind doctors. It goes back to 1910 and Carnegie and Rockefeller medicine. I'm not going to talk about that now, but the whole steering towards the pharmaceutical medications, which we know treat symptoms and they don't get to the root cause. Obviously very, very powerful in emergencies and trauma, getting us out of trouble, incredible. When we follow this model though, we're missing out on so much potential for human beings. Like an extraordinary amount of potential. And I rewatched the documentary, The Emotion Code, yesterday. And there's brilliant pioneers on there, people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. Bradley Nelson, who wrote The Emotion Code. So sorry, the documentary is called Emotion. And there are lots of other brilliant people. But one of them said, when a doctor says there is no cure for this, he said, what they mean is, drugs or surgery will not cure this. That's what he means. That's what doctors mean, which means when they say there is no cure for multiple sclerosis or fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis or motor neuron disease or you name it, any kind of cancer, what they mean is they haven't learned the technology to provide healing for that particular disease. I don't even like calling it diseases. I like calling these symptoms, really. It's like a symptom of an imbalance. And they haven't learned, because of their training, how these things fall out of whack. And when we're talking about epigenetics, we're just leapfrogging the whole medical industry almost. And not to be disrespectful, because it's obviously amazing in many, many ways.
Yeah.
However, what we're not finding out is the power that we have as humans to create this kind of healing. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, you know, he holds these workshops all over the world, and they have these spontaneous remissions from cancer, from Parkinson's, from Alzheimer's, from you name it, all these names that medicine gives things, and with a few meditations, it's gone. So I just think it's really amazing what you're doing, and this is the qualification. This is kind of a certification that I would love to get involved with myself, because you don't really get much higher than this in terms of, like, you know, the hierarchy of treatment for people. So what you're doing is really quite amazing.
You know, when you just said, like, because they're saying it's not curable by drugs and surgery, and then just as you say that, I just want, you know, your viewers and listeners to get that, because as soon as you say that, there's like a power surge that just goes through me, because it's like, well, recognition of, well, actually, hey, look at that. There's this power that goes through me that actually has the capability of doing it. And when we just become aware of it, you know that story of when the what do you call them now? It's not Red Indians, but what do you call them now in Canada?
I don't know the story. Sorry.
Anyway, you know, when the ancient people, like, they were there, you know, they're on the shores, you know, of America.
You're not talking about Native Americans.
Yeah, Native Americans. Okay, so let's say,
yeah.
Or maybe Aborigines. I don't know where it was, or there's another name for them as well now. So I apologize, but you know, when they were there on the shores and they were looking out. There was a ship there, but they didn't see it. And the reason, when the ship came in and the people came in and they said, well, what, didn't you see the ship? And they said, well, no, we didn't. And that's because the perception, never seen a ship. So they couldn't see the ship. So when we say the cure may not be with drugs and surgery, then suddenly something opens up, like, which we didn't know about or we couldn't perceive before. And suddenly that perception is there and we become aware of it. And once we do, then we're open to that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting.
So it's a shift in awareness,
Yeah. And it's not something that you kind of do overnight, generally. I've been on this path for a couple of years now. It wasn't like an overnight thing. And I had to have some solid evidence, really, until I started to believe it. So I'd say it's gone from a belief to an understanding. I can't say a knowing, but it kind of is a knowing that we are. I think I have a knowing. You know, there's a force way greater than ourselves. There is a universal force. There's a universal intelligence. There's a divine that we can open ourselves up to allow to flow through us and do this miraculous healing. So can we go now? We're talking about miraculous healing with quotation marks. Can we talk about one of your results with the babies?
Yeah. So go ahead.
Both of them.
Yeah. So I had two Down syndrome. So women came to me. They were pregnant with Down syndrome babies. They were 12 weeks diagnosed in the womb with Downs. And the way that they do that, they've had certain tests, but one of the things that they see is that they've got nuchal edema. I'm not a medical practitioner, so I can't really say much about that, but that's what, I was told. So that's the way they identified it in the ultrasound as well. So I worked with both of these babies. And the first baby, after 3 weeks, after 12, she had the scan at 12 weeks. They found out. She found me. We worked on her, and remotely. This is 3 weeks, for a period of 3 weeks, and she had another scan. So I just have to say also, this was an interesting case because she was not actually, the mother wasn't actually carrying the baby. It was a surrogate mother in another country, and she was in another country, and so it was like the father, mother of the baby, but a surrogate involved as well. So she was, so I was working on the whole thing, and after that, the 3 weeks, the nuchal edema wasn't even there anymore. So that the baby was born normal, and I believe she's in her like 11, maybe 12 now, I think. The other baby was diagnosed.
Just a quick one. Was there one about an additional chromosome? Is that the same thing? Because I'm not really very familiar with this at all.
Yeah,
what it is.
I'm glad you say that, because Down syndrome, we have 23 chromosomes. We have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So each pair one comes from your mother and one comes from your father. So that's how we have our genetic makeup. With Down syndrome, the chromosome number 21 is made up of 3 of those. So instead of 2, you actually have 3. So this is a physical thing, literally a physical thing where, your genetics, there's 3 of those. And that's what causes those features to change and, the whole thing inside the body, whatever it is. So that expression of the baby changed. In
the womb.
In the womb.
Statistically, what are the chances of that happening normally? Do you happen to know? Don't worry if you don't.
I don't know, but depends, again, perception. Are we looking at whether it's not possible? Are we looking at whether anything's possible? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally.
And that's how we have to approach life, I think, with this kind of view. It's really out there, yes. And then the second baby was also in the womb, diagnosed with nuchal edema, had all the other tests done.
So again, just for the viewers, listeners, that's indicating that the baby is more than likely going to have Down syndrome. They have an extra chromosome.
Yes.
So this is where, in many Western countries, they give the parents the option to abort. Yeah. So this is a pretty good indication that the baby's will be born with Down syndrome.
Well, with my client, this is his second client, said that the doctor said it's 99.9% accurate, these tests.
Wow.
So
then what happened?
So then when she was in her 9th month, before the baby was born, she had another scan, and there was no nuchal edema. The baby looked normal, was born normal, and that's it. So
extraordinary.
Both those cases is where you have 3 of those. It's called trisomy 21. Yeah.
Wow. So sorry, how long was it for the second one, for the results to, since working with the parents, and then the result, how long was it?
Well, she wasn't planning on having a scan till later on in the pregnancy. The other one was having a scan earlier on, so that was the variable there. But both babies born normal. So the point here, I think, is what we need to get across is, just like I said, those natives couldn't see the ship because they'd never seen a ship. We never thought something like this would be possible. Well, what if it is?
What if it's just normal?
Exactly.
It's just that we haven't been presented with the opportunity to see this.
Exactly. And once we do, yeah, and once we do, it's like we've taken off the glasses, you know, that were stopping us from seeing it.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Love that. For people who are resistant to understand this, I was going to use the word cynics. I just have. For people who are resistant to understand what you've just said, what are the likelihoods of the baby just naturally being okay again? I mean, you said the test itself is 99.9% accurate. Does sometimes it kind of sort itself out naturally anyway?
You know, I don't know that, because it may be that, you know, some mother was pregnant, and, you know, maybe she was carrying a Down's baby, and then she kept her perception of things as well, and, you know, loved the baby, and maybe things, and she didn't even know it was a Down's, and then it just turned out to be okay. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. And I don't even know if I work on another client like that, whether that's going to be the result. I don't know. And this comes to where we surrender to the universal force within. We just allow and hold that frequency and see what unfolds. You know, so it's very difficult for me to answer that question. But when that mother, the second mother, had the scan afterwards and showed it was normal, the doctor, that's when he said, he was scratching his head and saying, well, I can't understand this, because these are 99.9%. You must be the 0.1%.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Wow. Okay. So the doctor was baffled, and as often happens. Amazing. That's incredible. So 2 couples managed to have their Down syndrome child reversed, or the symptom of Down syndrome reversed. Incredible.
You know, when I was working in the laboratory, this was something that was brewing inside me. Like, I would look at all these kids that were coming in with these blood disorders, and it was so obvious, you know, because the sentences that DNA was reading was so out of whack, like so out of whack. They had extra letters in there, and there was all this other stuff. And I just, in my heart, just knew that something else was possible, but I didn't know what. Like, I couldn't see that ship, and I just didn't know. And life had to take me through different steps to be able to then see that was a possibility. And so my message really is just stand in that I know what's possible if we open our eyes to it.
Love it. And that's a big thing, isn't it? Opening our eyes to it, because it's almost like just kind of getting rid of all of our conditioning or all of our education, the limited stuff we do know on medicine and what's possible, and just kind of throwing it out the window.
Yeah.
And going, okay, I'm open to understanding something else beyond everything I've learned about is possible. And could there be something way more beautiful and powerful and healing than what meets the eye? So when you work with these couples, or with, you know, the person with arthritis that seems to be healed after half an hour with you, they must be very open. They couldn't be closed books about it and just refuse to believe it and then have the same results, could they? Because it's very much, well, you tell me. Is it?
Well, those couples with the babies, I mean, they're, you know, globally placed somewhere else in the world from me, and they found me on the internet. So they were looking for that. They knew what they were looking for. So I can't really speak for them. For the, you know, for other cases, it's people that do come to me are aware of it. They're aware of this work. And if I speak to somebody, I had an interesting one, without mentioning any other things related to it, but there's somebody I know that had lumps in her breast, and she was going to go get checked out. You know, and I didn't like, she wasn't a client or anything like that. It just, and I was trying to persuade her, like I heard about it and I was like, oh my God, I was like, you know, because you think the worst. And I said, well, she was thinking the worst too. And I said to her, I said, you know, I can do this work. I said, if you want me to help in any way. And she was like, but I don't understand, and I just don't understand how you can do it remotely. And so, you know, coming to your question, like with the beliefs and things, and I said to her, I said, look, you don't have to believe it, but you know. And then I kind of sat with, and I thought, because this is part of the work we do. It's like we don't enforce anything on anybody. We just, you know, we sit with it and see if it's right for us. And so I did, and I just sat with it. And she said, just do a session for me overnight while I sleep, if you want, she said. And so I did. And then after that, I didn't do anything else, and I didn't ask her anything. She had her tests about, I think, 2 weeks after that. And then I saw her a couple of days ago, and she just said to me, she said, what did you do? Because I went to the doctor before I spoke to you, and she said the lumps were there. I could feel them. And she said, when I went back again, she said there was nothing there. And she says, what did you do? And I said, I you know, I know what it is, but it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't, you know, it's a frequency. It's just a frequency, right? So
yeah, I think
it's possible.
That's it is frequency, isn't it? And that's what we are at the subatomic level. We are all just giant bundles of vibrations that every single cell is vibrating, isn't it? Every single cell that makes a tissue or bone or organ, everything's vibrating.
Yeah.
And different, this is actually something Rife found out in the early 1900s, but how cancer tumors can just be obliterated using frequency. And that's using sound frequency. And he also found that different infections and viruses and pathogens had different frequencies as well. So if you match the frequency, you can obliterate whatever it is, because that's what we are at the subatomic level. And quantum physics is all about that, isn't it? It's understanding that at the subatomic level, we are if we zoom in enough on an atom, we're 99.999% empty space, which is vibrating.